Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hello, I'm really sorry. I still can't get a video on me, which is so annoying. Right. Have we got everybody in?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Everybody's
Hi.
in the,
We've got John here. Who have we got? Harmon. Sue Tonks. You can't see me, but I can see you, Susie. Ken. Hello, Sarah. Thompson, not Thompson. Hello, Stephen. Havengill. Emma and Caroline. Amy. Hello, Amy. Jodie Fletcher.
We've had a view, Hazel, for a while.
Who said that? Was that Sue? Don't you worry, we're trying to get video while I'm going through this. Don't you worry. Right, have we got everybody in, Chris?
yeah, everyone's here who's waiting. So yeah, I'll admit anybody else who joins as we go on.
Lovely, beautiful. So do apologise, sorry you can't see me. I seem to have a problem with my camera this week. Not had it before, but there you go, that's technology for you. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm the membership manager here at the Chamber, and I'd like to welcome you to your ChamberLIVE event, talking about how you become COVID secure and get ready for moving out of lockdown. So it's getting your business ready, fresh thinking about your staff, their health, their well-being, but also getting back to business as usual. So we've got two speakers today who've got two presentations. These presentations will be around about 15 minutes each, and I'd like to introduce Emma Dixon from Social Distancing Kits. Give us a wave, Emma, so we can see who you are. Hello, Emma. Jonathan Dempsey from Red Laces Consultancy. Where's Jonathan?
Here I am.
Hello, Jonathan. Hi. Right, so Jonathan's going to be talking about risk in your business, and Emma's going to be talking about social distancing kits and moving your business forward to, as I say, make sure they're in good, safe hands when they do return. And then we're going to have a little bit of a chat about the presentations. What we want you to do, that you'll notice across the bottom of the bar there's a chat button. If you could kindly pop your questions on there throughout the presentations. While the guys are doing the presentation, if you could put yourself on mute, or Chris might do it for you because we'd like to keep the background noise to a minimum, and then we'll take those questions on the floor. Then I've got a couple of questions I want to ask and a couple of people I want to bring in that I know are working on some PPE products. So with no further ado, shall we hand over to the lovely Jonathan?
Thank you. So, find out we've got screen share.
How you doing, Jonathan? You all right?
Yeah, it's giving me a slightly different view of my screen now. So I'm trying to find out where my different files are. Is that shown on your screen?
Yeah. Did you do the share screen at the bottom?
I think, yeah, I did. Can you now see a presentation slide?
No, I can see your lovely face. This is technology for you. On your share screen, did it bring up your front screen?
You did. I went to share screen, but it's brought up. Let me try that.
And what we'll do, should we have a strategy, a little plan? Should we go to Emma and then bring you back in, Jonathan? We'll do Emma first, yeah?
Can you see this one now or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we are. Yeah, you see, you got me to change my mind and then change it back. Good. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I'd just like to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes just getting some different perspectives around risk that might be a little bit different from how you would normally approach it. And for this, define risk in a way that you normally would. So whether in your business you're thinking about food hygiene, whether you're thinking health and safety, fire safety, cyber risk, whatever it might be, and whatever level, this applies. So very briefly, this will move across. So very briefly, a couple of things to cover this afternoon. Some perspectives of risk. So really, how do you and how do your businesses view risk? Say in the context of leadership and culture. I want to talk about compliance and approaches to compliance. Reference that risk is a mindset. And if we think about it more in terms of risk and reward and opportunity for growth, rather than something we have to do, then actually that gives us more opportunity for creativity and more opportunity for growth. Just a little bit about myself. I won't go through this in detail, but I think what's more relevant is in my early career, I was an environmental health officer within Coventry and helped businesses with food hygiene, health and safety, environmental management, public entertainment licensing and the like, before moving to Redditch to focus on much more health and safety and also looking after care homes and nursing homes in that area in particular. Also covered fire safety, training and policy, and lots of different things in different sectors. Clearly, we're in the context of COVID-19, and probably the biggest thing to say about COVID-19 is it's one set of risks that are affecting everybody at the same time, which is actually quite unusual. If we go back 2 years and we think about Grenfell, then fire safety really had a major impact then and since then, in particular for accommodation and hotel, but not necessarily for all sectors, whereas now at the moment we're all being affected, but in different ways. I think what we are looking at is how can we use our thinking differently, because the world will be different when we come out of COVID, and actually how we did things in the past won't necessarily help us, and some different thinking may set us apart from our competitors. So something around risk and how we approach risk, because how we view the world can have a big impact on how we approach it and how we run our businesses and the kind of support that we're looking for. So do you tend to think about risk as a cost, a necessary cost, or as an opportunity for growth? In very simple terms, if you're a business owner, there's something you have to do. And if you're in a business, how do you see the business being run? Is risk something about a status quo and about maintaining things as they are and keeping them as they are, or is it about continuous improvement? Is it something that's a tactical necessity, so it's something that we have to do step by step, or is it something that we take strategic oversight from? So whether it's a multinational, whether it's a small business or a medium enterprise, do we think about risk as part of our business plans, part of our strategy, but in a positive way, and then integrate it into our team structures, our value proposition? Is it a technical silo? So do we leave it to the internal audit team? Do we leave safety to the safety team? Do we leave finance to the finance team? Or do we look at understanding what our risks are and use that as a source of collaboration across the business? Do we bring operational teams and head office or central back office functions together around core areas of risk? And do we use it to exercise control and hold things as they are, or actually is it a freedom to innovate? So when we're trying to look at how we can go to market with a new product or a new service, are we looking at the creative parts from an operations point of view, or are we looking at actually some of our risks and where some of that could give us an opportunity or a USP or something different? Leadership and culture clearly has a bigger driver on this. So the culture has a big impact on risk. You only need to look at the difference in operations on a construction site to in a call center. Yeah, there'll be different cultural things at play in different businesses and different sectors, but even within one organization, within an office environment and outside, between a sales function and an operations function. But what's being set from the tone for the business and how we handle ourselves drives those behaviors. It creates the environment. It emphasizes what's valued and what's rewarded. So if we're going to drive sales and drive productivity and not really focus on safety, we'll do the bare minimum and we condone that kind of behavior, whether we mean to or whether we don't. Whatever we focus on is what's going to be measured and what's going to be delivered. So that's going to influence behaviors. Now that might be doing us some harm, actually might be missing an opportunity. In terms of compliance, now many of you will be very well aware of your legal obligations, and for some of you that might be a struggle. Sometimes you might not have the support you need, and sometimes you might think, well, if we are compliant and we're doing what we need to do, we've done enough. And one question might be, certainly as we move forward, is doing enough, is doing just enough good enough for our customers? Are we compliant? Are we legal? Are we safe? Quite often the questions that I've heard over the past, but it very much is focused around the rules, around the law, and can evoke fear. So how many of you, if you were told the environmental health officers at the door, they want to see you, the fire officers at the door, they want to see you, police are at the door, they want to see you, how many of you would be fearful of, I wonder if we're covered, I wonder if we're doing enough? Is it binary? So are we compliant, are we not? It's black or white, we are or we're not. And life isn't like that, is it? If you think of any of your sites, or any of your parts of your business, it's not the same from minute to minute, from hour to hour, from daytime to nighttime, from summer to winter typically. So what it does, it tries to put this facade around simplicity, that life's straightforward. You can put it in a box, you can tick the box, you can move on and get back to running the business, which isn't really like that. Again, if you're fearful, then actually you can end up with a system that's more bureaucratic than it needs to be. You can end up driving a system rather than actually driving the system, driving the business. It can also be very defensive. Let's just do enough to keep me out of jail, and then I'm okay. Again, it's not asking the question about what more could we be doing, how could we be adding value to our business. It's actually a closed question. We're actually asking a closed question and probably a leading question. And it's a bronze standard. If you were thinking about the Olympics, how many Olympians spend all their life training to get a bronze? They're going to the Olympics to win gold. They might be happy with bronze, but the law can only require a minimum standard in whatever discipline, whatever law you think of. The law can't require you to be brilliant, the market leader, the best. It can only require you to do the minimum. So if you are compliant in those terms, you're at the minimum standard. Now that might be an aspiration for some businesses, but if that's the goal, then actually from a market point of view, your competitors or our competitors are likely to be achieving more than that. And again, it's siloed and it's fragmented. So clearly there is a need to meet legal obligations and know what they are, but this is more around the context. So we tend to use the term governance because it's a bit more neutral and it builds on. And we think of the governance we need to help us to run the business. And we used to think of that as being a foundation, like you'd have on a building. So you've got a strong foundation, you build up from that. But last week I had on a morning run, I came up with a different analogy and more around fitness and sports and athletics and the agility. At the moment, businesses need to be able to pivot. We need to be able to think about what's happening differently and how can we respond and provide for the world in a new way. So having a strong core, if you think about doing your abs and your crunches and getting your core of your body strong and fit, that helps you in anything else that you then do, whatever sports you do, whether you work on your arms, your legs, or whatever it might be. So actually, I think that's a much more appropriate term, embracing the complexity. So actually, there's some things we don't understand. Rather than trying to make it simple, that doesn't make it simple. Let's understand what the complexities are, get the right support around us, and embrace it. Let's think about what our risk appetite is. How good do we want to be, and what does that take? Let's make sure that we're adaptable and only proportionate. So if you've got a safety policy or a fire safety policy or anything else that you're using to help you to meet your obligations, make it fit for purpose, but only that. Build it into your strategy for growth, build it into your value proposition, and make sure it's agile, that it's not weighing you down. And then rather than thinking about a bronze standard, we're thinking about a winning ethos, we're thinking about the customers, and we're connected, we're thinking about how to bring different teams together. So in simple terms, risk is a mindset, it's dynamic. So we don't see it as being a function or a silo or technical specialism. All those things come to play, but actually life is dynamic and we can see that in our current world. It's transient and it's complex. Context is everything. If you take, for instance, the storeroom in a retail outlet, typically in the summer, it'd be fairly empty. But if you were going there at Christmas time, in peak season, the fire exits would be blocked, the corridors would be blocked, there'd be products stacked floor to ceiling. So you take any sector you're in, there will be context around what's happening and where. So what we try to do is take a focus, pick up 2 or 3 or 4 areas to focus on. If we refer back to logistics, where we spent some time, workplace transport is the #1 source of major injury and fatality. Work at height is #2. Contractor safety is a major area of risk, but also opportunity, #3. For you to take those 3 areas across the whole business, the communications team, the operations team, your engineering team, facilities management, and mobilize everybody around what are we going to try and do as a business moving forward? What's in our plan to understand these issues and collaborate around them? It becomes a real positive thing that we can motivate and mobilize around and add value across and get synergy across, rather than thinking we'll leave it to the safety team or other to tell us what we need to do, because actually the whole business coming together is more powerful. And we can then think about emerging risks and opportunities. So really value risk being a mindset. Just a practical example here, when I worked at Hilton several years ago, the executive head chef, I was doing an inspection and an audit and some training, and the executive head chef said, I really want to spend my time focusing on my team and my recipes, and I've got all this paperwork to do. Hazard analysis for food, health and safety risk assessments, fire safety risk assessments. So we took him over to a DPAT fryer, got some of the team around, got them to just explore some of the issues that you have around a DPAT fryer, whether it be potential for slips, scalding with the oil, glass or anything else getting into the food, or whatever it might be. On the back of that, because they can understand why and what we're trying to achieve through that risk assessment, risk management process, they were able to unlock the opportunity and solutions and ideas, and then tailor the documentation to fit the thought process. So it was less of a burden then that the chef had to go in the office and spend a day a week doing the paperwork. It was now a team activity that meant whatever they were designing, they could do it together. An example from logistics, again, a warehouse site down in Worcester, sort of depot managers around, 5 o'clock in the evening, we wore high-vis jackets, we were keeping to the walkways, we designed a little booklet that meant they could capture some of the key information that they needed to. It was all fine, nothing out of the ordinary. Took the depot managers back in at 5 o'clock the next morning. Because it was September, it was dark. So the same groups, same high-vis jackets, same walkways, following the training that the teams had been following. And there were parts of the site we couldn't see each other when we were standing on the walkways because the external lighting, some of the bulbs were out, nobody checks the bulbs, and there was no defect process, there was no process to check it, nobody thought about it, wasn't in the risk assessment. There were parts of the site where there was no lighting whatsoever because no lighting had ever been fitted to the site, but nobody had raised it. So the risk assessment, was it compliant? As far as the business was concerned, yes, we've had our audits, we report on accidents, we investigate it. Nobody had actually thought at 5 o'clock in the morning, what are our staff exposed to, even if they're following the training? So again, just thinking differently about asking the what if and being curious. And again, this is where leadership actually, and the business owners, people running the business, being curious and getting out into the business, could understand the risks that people are facing and some of the solutions. It doesn't have to be difficult. So opportunities, is there an opportunity now for you to create a new USP? A simple example, when I was at the Youth Hostel Association a few years ago, I went in as head of safety, health, environment, equality, and I was asked to take on safeguarding children. So I was the head of safeguarding children for a year with thousands of children and the summer camps where there's no parents. So I went on the NSPCC course, Designated Child Protection Officers. I asked them to endorse our policy. And they said, well, we don't endorse policies, that's not what we do. I said, look, if I write a brand new strategy, train our leadership team, put a brand new safeguarding policy in, will you put your logo on our policy? And I said, well, yes, if it meets all our criteria, we'll do that. Because we were both charities with aligned values. So we did that. Well, that created a brand new USP. So for summer camps, when we were going out against private sector competitors, we were the only ones that had a safeguarding policy with the NSPCC's logo on there. So if you're a parent sending your children off to summer camps, that's a USP. That's something that you've got. So it was an area of risk before, wasn't being tackled. Actually now it became a USP. But what can you do by thinking differently in your business and create a USP from potentially from your risk? So in conclusion then, very briefly, risk is dynamic, it's transient, it's complex. The culture, the perspectives you have, the way that you approach this and your teams have a big impact. Are we trying to avoid a negative, in other words, being compliant or aiming for compliance? We're trying to do the minimum and trying not to be caught out, or we're looking at the positives. Have we got that strong core of governance, but actually we're agile? Can we unlock some opportunities that maybe we didn't know about before? And some of that's through collaboration with different functions and teams and being curious. And can we make risk more of a strategic activity as part of our business and a value part of our business, not something to be avoided? In a nutshell, That's what I wanted to share with you this afternoon before handing over to Emma.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay then, Emma, over to you.
Does Jonathan need to end his share, or sorry? Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Emma Dixon. I'm from a company called Bamboo Creations, which are a print and production company. And during this time, we've set up on the side a sister part of our branch of our company called Social Distancing Kits, to help businesses get prepared for when we come out of lockdown. So today I'm just going to run through an extension of what Jonathan's talked about. Largely how we've approached this is to think about ways that businesses can apply some fresh thinking when it comes to how we want to bring this to life, these social distancing measures that the government has been really clear and simple on. And we're not going to focus on exactly what those measures are, because I think everybody knows what they are. They've talked a lot about 2 meters apart, keeping your hands clean, staying at home if you have symptoms. So all of that is really, really clear and obvious. I think what people and what we're finding since we've launched this part of our business is that people are more confused about what's out there, what can I do. Some small businesses and medium-sized businesses and big businesses don't have a huge amount of budget right now to implement this. So how can we do it in the most efficient and effective way that we stay on track with what is the government measures and means that we can open and stay safe. So to start that conversation, as we all know, we've probably seen these are a couple of snippets out of the press. We know that the ministers are drawing up the blueprint and they're working on that by each sector. So later this week we'll be really clear about how they would recommend these things are brought to life. They're giving out some more granular detail, but what they've been really clear on is workplaces need room to adapt, and they need to think about it in a different way so that it's safe for both employees that are going to feel more concerned about going back into these environments post-lockdown, and also customers, how it's a safe environment for them to return to and get them actively spending money again so that we really start to kickstart this economy. So thinking back to that question that we posed, Jonathan and I, it was all about, is your business ready for fresh thinking? And we talked about fresh thinking, and Jonathan's talked a lot about it in terms of approaches. As I said, we're really clear on the messages, but it's more the how and the what, the why, the where, the when. How do we actually get there? So first of all, it's sort of fresh thinking about being safe. So like Jonathan said, it's beyond just the word of being compliant and doing the right thing. It's trying to think about it in a different approach. So initially thinking about, well, who am I trying to keep safe? I'm trying to keep my customers safe. So people coming in, if you're in a shop, people coming in and out of the shop, if you're transacting with clients on a regular basis, how am I trying to keep them safe? It's thinking about your employees and the interfaces that they have with different people, and also things like suppliers. So, you know, where do they link into this puzzle, and how do I also keep them safe so that everybody that's engaging with my business feels safe and secure to operate still with us? It's then thinking about the how and the where. So where do they travel through the business? And we spent some time with some people and some businesses talking about flow through their businesses and what are those main interfaces and those main touch points that people have. So for example, if you're a coffee shop, for example, you would have people flowing through the business. They would have interfaces at different times with certain stations, but also certain employees. So it's thinking about what is that journey that people are doing through the business. If you're an office, you know, where are people, where's the main kind of high flow areas and high traffic areas that we really need to consider, and how do we make sure that within those areas people are safe? And then it's thinking about what are the key messages. So there's clear messages in terms of keep 2 meters apart and the really clear messages the government have set out, but it's how do we deliver them in a way that really suits my brand? And I think one of the best ones I've seen so far is Mondelez and Cadbury have done a 2 metre apart message based on how many chocolate bars it would take to be at those different distances. So they've done, it would take so many Toblerones to be 2 metres apart, or so many Cadbury bars to be so 2 metres apart. So they've added a little bit of light-hearted humour into the conversation. So they've not just made it dry, they've understood and appreciated their team. It's not messages that people are going to embrace and really want to see, but it's messages people need to see to feel that they're safe in the environment they're in. So how do we do it in a way that's really appropriate to our audience? And it can therefore be a little bit more lighthearted for certain brands, or it can be controlled in different ways. I think after that, it's also thinking about this beyond restraint. And Jonathan's talked a lot about this, about applying it to how we can use it as a way to embed a little bit of growth, or thinking about it in a way that's more positively spun for where the business is trying to go. So how can I do this in an environment, in a way that really helps to reassure people? So going back to what has been in the press and what the government has been talking about, how can we do it so that customers feel safe, and it reassures customers and it reassures employees that what we've created for them is this safe environment that people then want to engage with? How can we do it, use it to engage teams? And Jonathan's talked a lot about this as well. How can we make sure throughout the team, it's not just the leadership team that's bringing this to life, and then people just walk back into a business that this is all suddenly delivered, but actually it's a great opportunity to use teams all the way through the business to make this really relevant, because individual teams will know their own individual touch points, they'll know their own individual high pressure points and where things need to be executed and where they don't. And so bringing it together and embedding it in your values as a business is going to be really important, but making sure teams are on board with what you're doing and they know you're doing the right things will also mean that you're embracing teams, but you're potentially saving money as well, because you won't be doing things that are not seen to be needed. And as I said, you can also do it as a bit of an extension of your brand story, so you can make it quite conversational and you can bring it in a way that actually is more in keeping with your own tone and style. So to help with this, we've been working with quite a lot of businesses in all different guises, from solicitors to NHS trusts to schools to little coffee shops, lots and lots of different types of businesses, to kind of more corporate institutions as well. And we sent out a poll to them to kind of canvass what do they think they would need to be doing throughout their flow to try and make sure that social distancing is really brought to life. And we've tried to deliver this in this flow chart here. So some of the things that people have talked about are making sure externally, before people even enter a building, a site, a manufacturing site, an office, a shop, that it's really clear from the onset that what you need to do. What are those social distancing measures or hygiene measures that are in place? And where needed, PPE is readily available, so people, if they need to undertake that and have that with them, that they feel confident that it's readily available. They then move into that first touch point, so be that a reception area, be that the first interaction with somebody else, particularly where potentially 2 meters is harder to do. To make that an easier kind of first initial approach is having some type of protection, whether that's a protective screen, some type of way that you feel there's a barrier or some sort of barrier where you know both of you are safe. There's then been talk about making sure that in really tight corridors, which lots of people have in offices and in manufacturing sites, that there's one-way flow systems, and they're just really clear about this is one way, this is the way you'd walk through this building, this is the way you wouldn't go through this building. And so people just know, and there's no confusion there, and it's whether that's through signage or whether that's through team leaders that are managing that conversation with staff members, so they know those systems and those flows. People have also said things just like keeping doors open so that you don't have to handle them as much. Slightly more difficult when they come to obviously things like fire doors, because they have to be shut, but where doors can be kept open, it just means there's less touching, which definitely can help obviously with people. This 2 meter apart spacing guidance, using things like floor stickers or chevrons to really divide up spaces, to make sure that people are really clear about that's how far away you need to be from each other to work, and whether that's working stations, whether that's desks, or whether that's within a retail environment. They've also talked about obviously limiting numbers in offices, and this has been talked about quite a lot in the press about within schools as well, less people returning and doing it in staggered shifts, spacing desks, so cutting off desks, so it's kind of every other or every third desk that ends up being used where possible. Obviously these are not going to be possible everywhere, but where it is possible, those kind of measures make people feel more secure. No interlocking desks, and potentially no hot desking, so that people aren't using other people's spaces. Meeting room capacities, there's been a lot of conversation we've had with some of our clients about how do I manage my meeting rooms. You know, some of our meeting rooms are really only little kind of pods. How do we manage them? So really letting people know that capacity for that room from the onset, so people don't have that question mark, and that uncertainty just makes everybody feel more reassured. There's been quite a lot about communal areas, so a lot of debate, and this obviously will all become, I'm sure, a lot more clear by the end of this week, but people have taken on their own approaches, or started to take on their own approaches, such as people bring their own kitchen equipment in, no other kitchen equipment is readily available, one in, one out systems, so things like that will actually make sure that people obviously are spaced accordingly. Employees are trained, so I think this goes back to really engaging your teams and making sure you have social distancing champions within the business that really help to communicate what are the key measures that the business is doing and how within each individual department that's being managed. And then just regular inspections, seems a bit of a strict word, but regular sort of checks to make sure that these are being adhered to. Some businesses have even talked about sort of reward schemes to encourage people to do it, and then rewarding them off the back of that if, you know, when things have been done really well, or highlighting people that have done certain things with excellence. So that's been another piece that's been talked about. And then just sort of regular cleaning processes, so cleaning down workspace equipment if you're in a manufacturing site, or if you're sat at a desk, making sure that that desk is cleaned before you sit at it, and it's regularly cleaned throughout the process of being there. And then making sure that people have access to hand gel, or being able to wash their hands regularly, and they know where that can be done, and that can be done in a safe way as well. So whether that's kind of access to gel or access to facilities. And then for us as a business, we developed obviously some of these solutions ourselves. What we're finding is we're constantly modifying some of them, or bringing new things in as we kind of keep our ear to the ground, and we hear about either what's coming through from the government or from our own sort of customer base. People are kind of telling us what they're now doing and what they're finding is really effective, and so we're sort of reacting to that as well. But obviously some of the measures that people are putting in place include some of these items. So, you know, external ways of being able to communicate restrictions or guidance of what's going on in your office, your site, your manufacturing site, your retail outlet. Protective screens, there's a whole load of different types of protective screens that are now out there as a way to just help businesses implement these in a quick and easy and cost-effective way. And then lots on kind of floor and window stickers are kind of readily available to help people with kind of guidance through buildings, communication on meeting rooms and spaces they can and can't use. Just really helps people navigate through the kind of businesses that they're operating in. So I think the main outtake that we've got really is get creative, and get creative in a sense of really get to know what you need. Ask yourselves the W questions, so who, what, why, when, where, so that when you go through it, you're doing things that are purposeful and needed, and they're not things that you don't necessarily need to have in your business, because at the moment people don't have excess budgets to be able to spend, and so they want to make sure what they're doing is the right things, and really help to engage your teams to get them to help guide you through what should be those right, more creative solutions. And I think what we found is lovely is a lot of people have said to us they they want to see it as a way to get people, kind of kickstart people back into kind of getting into work. So they want to do it in a more embracing way, and so you don't have to feel it's got to be done sort of cold and dry. It can be done in a way that really suits your brand or your ethos or your values, and that's accepted as well. Anything kind of goes. You can get creative on this, and that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emma. Thanks, Jonathan. That's fabulous. Sorry you still can't see me. I have been trying.